If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer. This is their part number BB5070-400-600. This is it's a long part number for a pretty relatively typical hinge, in the sense that it's 4x4, it's ball bearing, it's commercial weight, it is 5 knuckle, it's steel based, it is full mortise, and it's 1/4 inch radius corners is what it is, in a prime coat finish. So this client ordered this hinge because they are replacing, they have a pair of wood fire doors in an entrance in a condo building, and we're supplying them with the replacement active panel, active door leaf, and then they're also replacing the hinges as well on that active only. And you know, they have some residential weight hinges that are there, which are thinner than these, but we don't really that's not a standard item for us, so we'd be dealing with a commercial hinge, and this hinge fit the bill, even though the client will have to mortise that leaf a little bit deeper. And this is what it looks like. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaf here and here that the leaves are meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame when they're brought parallel. Okay. Now let's dissect the part number. So BB stands for ball bearing. You've got 2 bearing packets, and you'll have 2 bearing packets on a standard weight hinge, whereas with a residential weight, you would, if it was a ball bearing hinge, and they do exist, it would be 2 bearing packets. But if it was a heavyweight, it would be 4 bearing packets, but you wouldn't see that on a 4-inch hinge. And standard weight means it ought to mean 130 thousandths. My caliper is telling me 134 thousandths, so that's what that leaf measures. The 5070 means a variety of things. It means that it's 5 knuckle. Okay, it means it's full mortise, as we discussed earlier. It means that it's made of steel. It means that it is a radiused corner with a 1/4 inch radius, is what that is. Okay, you can also do, obviously, square corner. You can do 5/8 radius as well. Square corner would just be a BB 5000. A 5/8 a 1/4 inch radius is obviously BB 5070, and I believe the 5/8 radius is BB 5080, but we'll check that in a moment. Now the 400 in the part number, that tells us that the hinge is 4-inch tall and 4-inch wide, and the height is the first dimension on hinges like this. That's important to note, that when you've got 2 dimensions and they're not the same, you know that the first dimension is the height. You could easily have a 4 by 3.5, a 4.5 by 4, a 5 by 12. We just sold half a dozen of those last week. So it's important to know the height is the first dimension, and just be mindful of that. The 600, the third part of that part number, means 2 things. It means it's made of steel, as I demonstrated earlier. Also means that it is in the prime coat finish. Okay. Now, where are you going to use this? A wood door and a wood frame application, where we know that it's going to be a wood door and a wood frame because it's 1/4 inch radius. In a steel frame, which you could have 4-inch hinges on, you would not do a radiused corner. I suppose it's technically possible, but I've never seen it. It would always be a square corner hinge. And the door can have a square corner or a 1/4 inch radius or a 5/8 radius. But because it's radiused corner, not square, it's telling me it's a wood door and frame. 1/4 inch radius means that they're using a 1/2 inch 2-flute carbide router bit when they're routing out the door and the frame, and they're not going back and squaring out the corner. They're leaving it radius. There's less work, faster production, lower cost. So an end user is seeing that radius corner, and they're saying to themselves, I have to have that radius corner. Well, if you have a wood door and a frame, you really don't. You can just square out those corners if getting a radiused corner proved to be more work, lead time, cost, and it does cost more money to get a commercial hinge and a radiused corner in general. So be mindful that you could certainly do it square corner as well. Okay, let's also let you know that fasteners are included. This client did not specify what they needed, and they have 4 of these hinges, so the factory has given us enough wood screws and machine screws 1224 by inch and a quarter. Pardon me. Number 12 by inch and a quarter flat head wood screws, and then 1224 flat undercut head machine screws is what they have. And it's obviously all in the 600 finish, which means, again, prime coat. Now, speaking of finishes, you can do these hinges in all of the finishes that Bommer can do on steel. Your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, your nickels, your satin, polished, oil rubbed, obviously prime coat, bright black Japan, zinc coated as well. Then they can make this hinge out of brass as well. They can do all the finishes that you can do on brass. In total, Bommer can do over 30 finishes, depending on the base material. You can also order these in solid stainless base material as well. Okay. So let's now switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at some supporting information. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Here is the item that we are looking at. There are some images linked to down below. Let's take a look. Here is our box showing our part number. That's our hinge. That's showing the swag on the hinge leaf there. That's the bend. That's what literally makes it a full mortise hinge. When you change this bend on one or both leaves, you're changing inherently the DNA of the hinge. The back side of the hinge. Please note these bearing packets. Just study these these vertical lines. I'd like to point something out to you in a moment. The logo, the Knuckle construction, close-up of the Bommer logo, made in USA. And then your screw package. Now, there is a link below this video to the cut sheet, and here it is. BB5000, that's the series of hinge that we're dealing with, and I'll show you how we get to the 5070. And the important part about this is it gives you how the part number changes when the base material changes. This would be a BB5071 in brass, a BB5072 in stainless steel. Gives you a chart of all of the available sizes that you can order this hinge in. Obviously, we're doing a variant where we have a radiused corner. Now, you'll note that vertical alignment of the barrel. Okay, nobody really thinks too much about it, but some people do. There are options. You can do a 3-knuckle hinge. This is like a concealed bearing. It's a cleaner look. So if you're concerned over what that hinge looks like, you can order it as a 3-knuckle, and you won't see those bearing packets. There'll be the friction reducing coefficient part of the hardware is concealed. A really nice looking finish, because that's going to be kind of what you see when the door is closed, this perspective here. Okay, so that's the cut sheet. Now there is a link below this video here to the manufacturer's page, and when you click on that, our landing page in our site for Bommer will load. I'd like to draw your attention to the how to order matrix, and this is the single page document out of the manufacturer's catalog that tells us exactly how you would put the part number together. So it's BB for ball bearing, 5 for 5-knuckle, 0 for full mortise. You get down here to the 7, that's the 1/4 inch radius. 8, I was correct, 5/8 radius. 0 for standard. And then your 0 for standard weight made of steel. So you can see how that part number is built. So a really handy document. It's the way by which you can determine what kind of hinge you're building. Also with this hinge, the client could have ordered it as a non-removable pin or added some other type of security feature to it. If this door swung out, you would certainly want a non-removable pin or a security stud or both that will prevent that pin, or all but prevent the pin from being driven out of the hinge. Or if the pin is driven out with the security stud, it will prevent you from separating the leaves, or all but allow you to separate the leaves. Because this is a residential hinge, we should talk about decorative tips. I know that this is going into a residence. Ball tip would not be uncommon. Acorn tip or steeple tip. There are other tips that other manufacturers have. Square. Urn is another common tip. but Bommer offers, in addition to the button tip, which is the standard tip, ball, acorn, and steeple. Ball is by far the most common of the decorative tips. This catalog is pretty handy because it will allow you to review all things Bommer related, but it's also like an introduction to Hinge College Course 101, because it will talk about all of the different terminology. What is a full surface versus a half mortise versus a half surface versus a full surface versus an anchor, a slip-in, a power transfer, a raised barrel. All these different features, all these different hinge types are discussed here, and it gets right into it. Here's a formula for determining the width of the hinge that you need. A table that will allow you to help determine that. Talking about the hinge swag that we had mentioned earlier. Obviously a handing chart, cross-reference chart. Lots of important documentation here. Should you need to or want to dive into the world of hinges, this would be a great document. If you work in commercial hardware, this will be, it's required reading is the bottom line. Full mortise, half mortise, full surface, half surface. Wide throw, swing clear, anchor hinge, raised barrel, slip in. I mentioned all of them except the swing clear. Security options, etc. So a really great document to dive through. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. The ball bearing hinge is nice to have because the leaves will operate rather smoothly. Plain bearing hinges will be lacking those two bearing packets. And what happens with a plain bearing hinge versus a ball bearing hinge is you've got these knuckles just wearing on each other over time. If it's a high trafficked door in a residential application, if it's the garage to the house, the front door, that kind of thing, versus the linen closet that you might be in three times a week. On those high traffic doors, you're going to want to use ball bearing because it won't be evident day one the substantial advantage to ball bearing reducing the amount of friction. But in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you are absolutely going to notice substantial different amount of wear pattern when you're using a ball bearing hinge. What happens is the hinge knuckles grind themselves down, the metal fatigues and falls off, and now your door is literally not sitting in the opening correctly. Then what happens is the homeowner will tighten up the screws, and then they'll strip the screws, and now we've got a problem. Now someone runs drywall screws into it, because what you're trying to do is bring the door back up because the latch is not hitting the strike anymore, because that hinge is worn to the point where the door is now sagging. Long-term, 20-year, 5, 10, 20-year, absolutely worth the investment. It's not that much more money for ball bearing hinges. And in my opinion, if it was not an issue of cost, I would put ball bearing hinges everywhere because I've seen firsthand how much longer they last in that sense. This client with the fire-rated doors, the door is going to weigh over 125 pounds for sure. You would never consider anything but ball bearing. If you have a fire-rated door, you'll need ball bearing. If you have a door with a door closer, you'll need ball bearing. You really want that to swing as smoothly as possible. I'd like to point your attention, well, I showed you the photograph earlier. You can't really see it on camera as much. But that Bommer logo, it says Made in USA. That's a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. I've been to both of their facilities. They have a separate plating facility where they do all of their plating, obviously. Then they have their manufacturing facility, and they're, 10, 20 miles apart. The plating facility is noteworthy because the plating is historically known to be a dirty sort of industrial process. Bommer's plating facility is so state-of-the-art that the wastewater that they eject is cleaner than the municipal water supply, and there's nothing wrong with the municipal water supply. So they have a really state-of-the-art scientific process for plating. Their manufacturing plant, which was a joy to be able to tour, it left me with an absolute realigned appreciation for how awfully difficult it is to make hinges. Making steel doors and frames are easy compared to hinges. Hinges are tough. So I have a new appreciation for what it takes to make a hinge. I'm, an advocate of Bomber. I like the Made in the USA approach. They're the only manufacturer who's thoroughly domestically manufactured. That may or may not mean anything to you. To some people it does, to others it doesn't. To me it happens to matter. And there you go. Any questions on the BB5070 in a 400 size and a 600 base material and finish, or any other Bomber product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.